It was the kind of scream that did not belong in a place like Alder Hollow. Alder Hollow was the kind of town where clocks ticked politely and curtains fluttered in windows without making a fuss. But the scream, sharp, human, and soaked in panic, ripped through the still air just after dawn. Lina Warren, who had been tending to her kettle of porridge, froze mid-stir. Her knuckles whitened around the wooden spoon. She'd been waiting for this day. Not in the way you wait for a birthday or the first snowfall, but in the way you wait for a truth you've been trying not to think about. Her brothers, Thom and Elias, burst in through the back door moments later, both pale as death and talking over each other. "It's happened again," Thom said. "It's not what you think," Elias tried, but his voice cracked. Lina knew. She didn't have to be told. The Three Sillies were at it again. And this time, she feared, they might not walk away. Main conflict, the weight they carried. The Three Sillies weren't a joke. At least, not anymore. Once, years ago, it had been a silly name for three inseparable siblings who were known for doing foolish, harmless things, like racing barefoot through the market or attempting to eat an entire pie in one bite. But after the night of the mill fire, silly had taken on a new meaning, one whispered in tight-lipped gossip and side-eyed glances. No one knew exactly what had happened that night, except that old Mr. Granger had been found in the river, his pockets filled with stones, and the Warren siblings had been the last to see him alive. The town called it a tragedy. The sheriff called it an accident. But Lina, Thom, and Elias carried something heavier than either word could hold. Lina. She was the oldest, the one who had promised their dying mother she'd keep the boys safe. But safety had meant lying, hiding, pretending. And each day, the pretense gnawed at her like a quiet, patient hunger. She told herself she was the glue holding the three of them together, but lately it felt more like she was the rope tightening around all their throats. Thom. Thom was all sharp edges and too much heart. He still woke at night from dreams where Mr. Granger was speaking to him, not accusing, just asking questions Thom could never answer. Thom didn't tell Lina about the dreams. He told no one. Instead, he kept moving, fixing fences, chopping wood, because stillness felt too much like guilt. Elias. Elias was the youngest, and at 17, he had already perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight. He spoke little, listened much, and sometimes vanished for hours into the marsh at the edge of town. What he did there, neither Lina nor Thom knew, but he always came back smelling faintly of river water. Now, another scream. Another body. This time, it was Marin Holt, the town midwife. Found in her kitchen with a note clutched in her cold hand. "I'm sorry, but I cannot bear it." Only, everyone knew Marin didn't know how to write. The spiral. The sheriff came by that afternoon. He didn't accuse, not outright, but his eyes lingered on them too long. "Strange things happen when the three of you are together," he said. "I'd keep to yourselves for a while." That night, the siblings sat around their kitchen table in silence. The lamp flickered between them, casting shadows that seemed to lean in, eager to listen. Finally, Elias spoke. "It's starting again." Thom's jaw tightened. It never stopped. Lina wanted to protest, to insist there was a logical explanation, but deep down she knew the truth: they were not cursed, exactly, but bound to something they had never named. The first death had been an accident. The second, maybe. But by the third, it had felt inevitable, like the river itself had reached out to claim its due. The twist of the pact. What Lina didn't know, what neither Thom nor Elias had ever told her, was that on the night of the mill fire, they had made a pact. Mr. Granger had caught them stealing grain. He'd threatened to tell the sheriff. And Thom, in a panic, had shoved him. Just a shove, but it had been enough to send the old man tumbling into the river. Elias had been the one to jump in after him. He tried to pull Granger out, but the man had fought like a wild thing, screaming words Elias couldn't understand before the water swallowed him. So they made the pact: no matter what happened, they would keep the secret. They would protect each other, even if it meant letting the truth rot inside them. What they hadn't realized was that sometimes secrets don't rot, they grow. The stranger. 2 days after Marin Holt's death, a stranger came to Alder Hollow. He was tall, dark-coated, with a smile that looked borrowed from someone else's face. He introduced himself simply as Finch. "I'm here to write about your town," he told Lina when she encountered him at the well. Small places have big stories. But his questions were too pointed, his interest in the Warren siblings too sharp to be casual. When Lina asked directly what he knew, Finch only said, "Sometimes, people carry something so heavy it changes the air around them. You can feel it if you're paying attention." Elias's confession. That night, Elias didn't come home. When he returned at dawn, his clothes were wet and his eyes were rimmed red. He wouldn't meet Lina's gaze. "It's not stopping," he said. "The river wants more." Lina grabbed his arm. "What did you do?" But he wouldn't answer. The third scream. 3 nights later, the third scream tore through Alder Hollow. This time, it was Finch. His body was found on the riverbank, his pockets heavy with stones, his smile gone. The sheriff came knocking again, but there was no proof, only whispers. Still, the town turned colder. Doors closed as the siblings walked by. Children crossed the street. The unraveling. Lina began to dream of the river, dark, endless, whispering her name. In her dreams, Thom and Elias stood waist-deep in the water, beckoning her in. Thom started spending nights in the barn, saying he couldn't sleep indoors. Elias stopped eating altogether. One night, Lina woke to find Elias gone again. She followed the muddy path to the river and found him standing on the bank, barefoot, murmuring under his breath. Thom stood a few feet away, watching. "It's the only way," Elias said. Lina stepped forward. "What is?" Elias turned, and in the moonlight, his face looked like a stranger's. "To give it what it's owed. The choice." The water lapped softly, almost sweetly, at the shore. Lina realized, with a sickening certainty, that the river hadn't taken anything from them, it had been fed. Fed by their fear, their guilt, their silence. She looked at Thom. "We end this tonight." But Thom's eyes were fixed on the water. "It doesn't end, Lina. It only changes who it calls for." Conclusion, the fourth. In the weeks that followed, Alder Hollow returned to its quiet rhythms. The Warren farmhouse stood empty. Some said the siblings had left town. Others swore they'd seen 3 figures wading into the river at dawn and never coming back. No bodies were ever found. But on still mornings, when the mist hangs low over the water, townsfolk claim they hear laughter, faint, almost playful, carried on the current. They call it the sound of the Three Sillies. And no one dares go near the river.